there! Today we are going to explore New Wave. New Wave refers to the pop-oriented styles from the late 1970s and the 80s, including power pop, art rock, synth-pop, and the less abrasive punk rock. New Wave is the most umbrella music genre term ever, and I hate it! Who invented this?
There was never any such thing as New Wave. It was the polite thing to say when you were trying to explain you were not into the boring old rock and roll, but you didn't dare to say punk because you were afraid to get kicked out of the fucking party and they wouldn't give you Coke anymore. There's new music, there's new underground sound, there's noise, there's punk, there's power pop, there's ska, there's rockabilly, but New Wave doesn't mean shit.
But after watching this video, you will have a very clear idea of what New Wave actually is. Modern, stylish, danceable. A humorous and light-hearted pop approach. Rhythmic experimentation and the use of keyboards. Mainstream appeal and popularity. Some people say that the dark side of punk is post-punk, while the bright side of punk is New Wave.
Part 1. American New Wave.
From the late 60s to mid-70s, punk was brewing in New York City and Detroit, with acts such as Devo Underground, The Stooges, NC5, New York Dolls, Patti Smith, Television, and the Ramones. As early as 1973, music critics described the Devo Underground and the New York Dolls as New Wave. Not only the punk bands tended together at CBGB, but also the not-so-typical punk bands, such as Talking Heads, Mink DeVille, and Blondie. However, punk rock was still an underground phenomenon in America then. In 1977 and 1978, Sex Pistols and Elvis Costello performed in America respectively and then rose to popularity, bringing punk rock to American mainstream rock audience attention. However, punk had built a reputation of being dangerous and potentially embarrassing within the music business, so American record companies started to label bands as New Wave. Talking Heads debuted at CBGB in May 1975, gaining recognition in New York City almost immediately, and then signed to Sire Records.
I was sucked into the room. It never happened to me ever before or since. I felt like I was being charmed by a snake charmer or something. And I said, "What is this? This is fantastic." I ran up to them after the show. I said, "I'm Seymour Stein. I gotta have you on my label, Sire Records."
Talking Heads' debut album, Talking Heads 77, features spare instrumentals, staggered rhythms, and non-linear lyrics. Okay, I'm gonna put this down in case you think I'm gonna hit you. David Byrne's nervous, nerdy persona can also be seen in other new wave acts, such as Devo and Elvis Costello. Their robotic dancing, high-pitched vocals, and specific fashions are drastically different from the 60s, 70s hippie aesthetic that tend to exhibit sexual bravado.
I get pretty nervous, although I don't, and sometimes I have to take a shit a couple of times before I go on. I guess that's because of the nerves.
Talking Heads later chose Blondie as their producer and then released a series of albums, more songs about building and food, fear of music, and remaining light. These albums show Talking Heads' growing artistic ambition and experimentation with funk, polyrhythmic Afrobeats, and creative jamming. Talking Heads bassist Tina Weymouth and drummer Chris Friends, who are also a couple, formed the playful dance group Tong Tong Club in 1981. David Byrne and Brian Eno also collaborated on an album called My Life in the Bush of Ghosts in 1981, and the concert film Stop Making Sense by Jonathan Demme is a classic. Talking Heads are the leading new wave band, clever art school punks, and were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2002. The amount of times I have joyfully jumped around like an idiot listening to This Must Be the Place is outright embarrassing. You know this band Talking Heads, so I'm gonna stop now. Another leading new wave band that you have probably heard a million times in your life are Blondie. Blondie also started out as CBGB and released their extremely successful album, Parallel Lines, in 1978. Blondie's initial press release writes, Blondie is a band. This is an accomplished bunch of musicians, a tight, compact group versed in everything from surf to punk, to girl group music, to erstwhile new wave. But oh, I'm sure you couldn't have a focus on the Blondie frontman, Debbie Harry. At CBGB, Blondie were originally considered as the least likely band to make it, and then turned out to be the most commercially successful. They also modeled the industry change from punk to new wave in the late 70s. Their success also shows that new wave could be indistinguishable from mainstream pop sometimes. Some of their popular hits like the disco-influenced Heart of Glass, Call Me, and Dream Me are just amazing pop songs that everyone can enjoy. While New York City was central to the development of American punk and new wave, many representative new wave bands did not really rise out of CBGB or Mass Kansas City. The Boston-based band The Cars, with their punk minimalism, 50s rockabilly inspiration, and accessible power pop, racked out a string of platinum albums and top 40 singles. The Cars' Rick Ocasek was also a renowned producer and had produced albums for Weezer, Guided by Voices, Suicide, Bad Religion, Bad Brains, etc. One characteristic of new wave is the irony, which is best shown in the band Devo from Akron, Ohio, from their staccato cover version of Rolling Stones' I Can't Get No Satisfaction. Their industrial jumpsuits and bizarre headgear to their mechanical sound.
Now whip it into shape it up, get straight.
Devo playfully convey the dehumanizing effect of industrialization.
Some people think they're toilet seats. They're not. They're floppy disks, actually. And there's a lot of genetic information tied up in here.
Another new wave post-punk band from Ohio that also expressed the negativity of modern industrialization are Pere Ubu, but far more neurotic than Devo. Like the Cars, the B-52s from Athens, Georgia, also embrace references of 50s, 60s pop elements, including surf music, girl group vocal harmonies, and the vintage organ sound. They also have a distinctive flamboyant fashion and a queer sensibility in contrast to the macho punk rock. In 1978, the B-52s released their debut single, also a representative new wave song, Rock Lobster. Both American new wave bands and punk bands adopt a stripped-down, basic approach and do not really fancy the pretentiousness and grandeur of the 70s progressive rock. American new wave bands often find musical and visual inspiration from pop rock before the Beatles' 1967 album Sgt. Pepper. Punk, however, tends to express in anger towards social and political issues, while American new wave bands are like the memes on the internet, sarcastic and do not really take things very seriously. In Los Angeles, California, where many record labels were headquartered and many local bands were signed and then released albums labeled as new wave, such as The Knack, The Go-Go's, War of Voodoo, Oingo Boingo, Missing Persons, The Bangles, etc. My Sharona by The Knack was a hit single and the #1 song in 1979. The song Eternal Flame by The Bangles was one of the first English songs that I was trying to learn how to sing.
Do you feel my heart beating? Do you understand?
One of the most prominent new wave acts from the UK is Elvis Costello. Costello's original name is Declan, and he got himself a professional name, Elvis, and his signature look also shared strong resemblance to Buddy Holly. In 1977, Elvis Costello's and the Attractions was scheduled to play Less Than Zero on Saturday Night Live. However, just a few seconds to the song, Costello asked the band to stop, trying to intimate Jimi Hendrix's rebellious acts on a BBC show.
I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, there's no reason to do this song here.
And then they started playing the song Radio Radio, a song criticizing corporate radio.
Radio, radio. 1, 2.
In 1978, Elvis Costello and the Attractions released the widely acclaimed album This Year's Motto. Elvis Costello mixes the cynicism and energy of punk with traditional pop songwriting, old-school American music influences with British humor, while also expressing his bitterness of simply not getting laid. Other UK new wave singer-songwriters that originally emerged from the 70s British pop rock scene are Graham Parker, Nick Lowe, Dave Edmunds, and Ian Dury.
Part 2. British New Wave.
British New Wave is different from American New Wave. British New Wave shows more influence of glam rock, ska, reggae, and more common use of synthesizer. American New Wave shows more influence of 50s, 60s pop rock, and more punk influence, and more guitar bass in general. Obviously, there are bands that are exception to the rule, I'm just talking in general. Well, the aforementioned Elvis Costello is British. Stylistically, he is closer to American New Wave, with a penchant for wordplay and a certain humor that is very British. The initial motivation to call bands like Talking Heads, Devo as New Wave was to disguise their punk roots. The British New Wave bands like The Police, Eurythmics are much further away from blues roots and more futuristic and more reliant on technology. Therefore, I think British New Wave bands fit the New Wave terminology better in my opinion. But that's not to say that I prefer British New Wave to American New Wave, or that American New Wave bands are not experimental enough.
Over the past few weeks, the pop music scene and the fashion scene have been influenced by a new youth cult, the New Romantics or the Blitz Kids, whose devotees claim that their movement will be as influential as punk and far more positive. They're a mixture of students, fashion designers, musicians, and those with routine jobs that they escape at night by dressing up in extravagant costumes. As the Blitz Kids explained to Robin Denzelo, they regard their colourful movement as a positive reaction to a difficult world.
Many, but not all, British New Wave bands started from the underground subculture called New Romantic, originated in the late 1970s. Influenced by David Bowie, Mark Bolan, and Roxy Music, the New Romantics developed fashions inspired by the glam rock era, coupled with the early Romantic period.
If punk was all about rebellion, the New Romantics are all about style.
The New Romantic emerged from the nightclub scene in London and Birmingham at venues such as Billy's and the Blitz, and then went on to dominate the pop charts worldwide in early to mid-80s.
Is this all an escape from the miserable political and economic realities outside?
Nobody should knock fantasy, and I mean a lot of the people that come to these clubs, or what we were doing, were working from 9 to 5, but they were fed up with doing the 9 to 5 job. And it's not a political message, but what they were doing by coming out at 9 or 11 o'clock at night and escaping that 9 to 5 job and dressing like a Hollywood film star, or dressing and expressing themselves like self-expression and escaping that 9-to-5 route, which people shouldn't be knocked for because they're getting away from it and they're having a good time.
Notable bands associated with the new romantic movement are Visage, Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, A Flock of Seagulls, and Culture Club. Other than new romantic bands, there were so many so-called British new wave bands with a kind of synth-pop bass, dancey sound. They are literally the soundtrack of the 80s British pop. Bands like ABC, Adam and the Ants, Depeche Mode, Gary Numan's, The Human League, Ultravox, Tears for Fears, Orchestra Maneuver in the Dark, etc. and many others. British New Wave is also related to the American-centric term, Second British Invasion. Music television, also known as MTV, was launched in August 1981 and quickly began to challenge radio as the most important medium for pop music in America.
This is it. Welcome to MTV Music Television, the world's first 24-hour stereo video music channel. Now, just moments ago, all of the VJs and the crew here at MTV collectively hit our executive producer, Sue Steinberg, over the head with a bottle of champagne, and behold, a new concept is born. The best of TV combined with the best of radio. Now, starting right now, you'll never look at music the same way again.
The first music video to ever played on MTV was Video Killed the Radio Star by The Buggles. Ironic title, isn't it? Due to the shortage of usable videos in the early years of MTV, many British acts received disproportionate airplay on MTV, leading to the term Second British Invasion.
You discovered Stray Cats, Duran Duran, Def Leppard, Adam Ant, A Flock of Seagulls, ABC, Eurythmics, Men at Work, Loverboy, Madness, Missing Persons, Thomas Dolby, Culture Club, The Fix, U2, Saga, Billy Idol. What would your eyes and ears have done for the last 2 years without them? We play the best new music first. MTV Music Television.
Many of these bands have sleek, dazzling music videos. Some hit singles are
Oh, I swear, who broke my heart? You did. I want candy. Sweet dreams are made of these. Our house in the middle of our street. Our house. Now you gone. Much is true.
These tunes are so ubiquitous. You have listened to them on the Earth, on Mars, on Jupiter, and you are already so sick of these tunes, and maybe at one point in your life you had to deliberately avoid them. But one day you'll hear these tunes again, and you'll be like, oh my god, I miss the 80s. MTV also resulted in a phenomenon of one-hit wonders when the artists became heavily identified by that particular single and music video. Second British Invasion reached its peak in 1983, when 30% of US record sales were from British acts. The Police album, Synchronicity, was #1 on the Billboard for 17 weeks, and the single, Every Breath You Take, was a best-selling single in the US in 1983. Some post-punk musicians also ventured into new wave, such as The Cure, Susie and the Banshees, New Order. U2 from Ireland were also associated with the new wave scene.
Sure is. Says Hubba Bubba starts soft, stays soft. Stays soft, chew after chew after chew.
Hubba Bubba starts soft, stays soft.
Neue Deutsche Welle literally means New German Wave. It's new wave music from Germany sung in German with influences from the UK and local German music. Some more mainstream New German Wave acts are Nina Hagen, Falco from Austria, and Nina. However, there are actually many more new German wave bands. Some are poppier and some with a more underground, punk, post-punk sound. West Germany actually had a larger population than the UK in the 80s. I'm not going to embarrass myself and pronounce those extremely long, difficult to pronounce German names right now. Freiwillige Selbstkontrolle. I had put a new German wave playlist in link in the description. If you're interested, you can check it out. Kraftwerk and other German krautrock bands' use of electronic instrumentation in the 70s was very influential to new wave, especially British new wave to begin with. Kraftwerk pioneered and influenced new wave, but they are not part of the movement. Another similar case are the Japanese electro-pop band Yellow Magic Orchestra, who has influenced Duran Duran, Japan, and had also released a collaborative album with the Human League. In Australia, representative new wave bands are Inner Sex, Ice House, and Men at Work. To some extent, a new wave bands need to sing in English, had hit-charting singles, as well as being annoyingly overplayed on MTV. New wave was more of an Anglo-American-centric movement than a style. New wave started in the late 70s and started going downhill around mid-80s. By 1985, the new wave sound was extremely common, and there was simply nothing new about it. After 1985, British new wave either became synth-pop or part of mainstream pop, and American new wave bands had mostly taken a hiatus. However, the underground bands that did not have a chance to be played on the MTV or commercial radio when new wave was trendy gained popularity in the mid to late 80s in the US. The previous college radio darlings such as IEN, The Replacements, and Husker Du all signed to major in the late 80s, paving the way for alternative rock explosion in the 90s. In the UK, the guitar-based band The Smiths also became very popular around mid-80s, marking the end of the synth-driven British new wave and the beginning of the guitar rock that dominated English rock into the 90s. Looking back, British new wave has been very influential on the mainstream pop, rock, as well as electronic music. American new wave's influence goes into mainstream rock, indie rock, and pop-punk. Occasionally, we would still hear that 80s bubbly, slick sound and feel bouts of nostalgia. Okay, I think that's about the new wave video, and if you like it, please give it a like button down below, and you're also welcome to share your thoughts in the comment section down below as well about your thoughts about new wave music and your favorite new wave music, your favorite new wave bands. I spent a lot of time trying to explain what new wave actually means, because I kind of try to be accurate. But maybe everybody has a new wave in their hearts. And I'm going to send my Patreon support. Thank you very much. Okay, see you. Bye bye.